So I thought I would start with kind of an overview of the immune system, and that will help understand where vaccines and so forth fit into the picture. And again, this is going to be really simple because a med school level immunology course easily can take a whole quarter. The immune system is incredibly complex. So this is going to be a simplified view of it. But what I've got here is kind of a picture of, I'm gonna equate our body to like an army base. So and around the army base is the fence or the wall, and that would correspond to our skin. Our skin and the inner lining of our respiratory tract and the inner lining of our intestinal tract are like the first line of defense. It's like the fence, guarding against the invaders. The invaders on the outside here, you can see them on the outside, and the invaders are like bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites that are wanting to invade the body. And so underneath the skin around our body are scattered, like for the army base, it would be like the military police. And the military police are armed with standard equipment, and they would be what we call the innate immune system. So we have two parts of our immune system. One is called the innate, the other one is called adaptive immune system, and we'll kind of explain the difference. The innate immune system are kind of like the first line responders, the military police, guarding the outside of the base, that are able to basically identify any kind of invader and recognize that they're an invader and that this is not part of self, not part of the body. And they are the ones that initially interact with an invader to try and repulse and to stop the invaders or the invaders from coming in. And this is the part, the innate immune system, these military police are the part where, if you've seen Dr. Sehalt's video, what he was basically talking about is all of the things that we can do to try and improve this innate immune system. In other words, put more military police around outside, make them, instead of sleeping on the job, be able to actually fight against the invaders. So when an invader first comes in, this innate immune system is the one that recognizes them initially and begins to send out messages to other military police. We've got an invader, come and join me. And they are the first ones to try and stop the invader. And many times they're able to do that. And they can stop, or at least they stop a few of the invaders. And when they kill an invader, they are able to take the uniform maybe, or some part of the invader, and they take them to what's called the Invader Identification Center. Now, these are special cells in the immune system called antigen presenting cells, and they present this antigen that's like the sword or the gun from the invader or whatever, that identifies specifically what kind of invader this is, very specific to each invader. And they present that to there's two different types of cells within our in the adaptive immune system. This is the other half of the immune system. The innate immune system kind of reacts to any invader. The adaptive immune system is designed to respond to just one particular kind of invader. And there may be thousands, millions of different kinds of invaders that this adaptive immune system is designed to recognize and to start developing their own special weapons against that particular invader. And they're divided between two different cell types. The one are called T cells. And T cells, the innate immune system presents the identification to the T cells, and these T cells can turn into very vicious attack cells to attack the invaders, or they also are what are called T helper cells that help the rest of the immune system ramp up and get going. Now the other ones are called B cells, and what they do is they make special protein molecules called antibodies. And these antibodies, I'm trying to come up with an analogy to this army-based body, but it would be like, you know, when the innate immune system gets started, they're sending messages back to headquarters saying we've got an invasion, and we need the cavalry, we need the tanks, and so the antibodies are kind of like the tanks and so forth. They're very specific to a particular kind of invader, and the antibodies act like like handcuffs almost. So as soon as an invader would come in, the antibodies would act like handcuffs and just handcuff the invader and prevent the invader from being able to use their weapons, and stop them in their tracks, basically. Now the time between from an invasion starting, from the very beginning of an invader coming in until the adaptive immune system really gets kicked into high gear, making these special weapons, the special antibodies and the T cells. You know, initially, when a new invasion comes into the body, there may be only a handful of T and B cells that recognize that particular invader. If it's the very first time the body's ever seen it, it may be just a handful of T and B cells that recognize that particular invader. And within a week to 10 days, those handful of T cells have become millions and billions of T cells that all recognize that invader, and the millions and billions of B cells that are pumping out these antibodies, these special weapons against that particular invader. So it takes roughly 7 to 10 days from the initial invasion until the full army is engaged with the invader. And it's that time period waiting between the invasion and when the army gets, you know, like when we went over to fight Desert Storm in 1991, it took weeks for the army to get over there and to get set up. Well, it's the same way with our immune system. It takes days and days for the army to get tooled up to really fight off the invaders. And it's during that time where the innate immune system is trying to hold the invaders, hold the line and hold them off until the cavalry comes in to finish them off. And so basically, this is where vaccines come in, because all a vaccine is the identification piece from the uniform or the weapon that the invader uses. It's that one small piece that is injected and and sent into the army base, and the military police pick it up, bring it to the invader ID center, and ID who the invader looks like is coming in. It's kind of a faking the system, because it's not really an invasion. That the handgun that the invader is going to use or whatever can't do the invasion without the invader. So it's kind of just presenting their identification, and then that message gets sent to the adaptive immune system, and all those T cells and B cells start responding as though there's a full-blown invasion when there isn't. But they are, so to speak, tricked into thinking there's a full-blown invasion. And so they are pumping out the special weapons and the T cells and developing all of those in place, putting them in place scattered around the army base, so that when a real invader, that had that was recognized, comes in, those specialized weapons, the antibodies, the T cells that are very vicious fighters, they're already there. There's no time between when the invader comes in and the full army. It's like the full army is in motion right from the very beginning. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of how the vaccine fits into the whole system. Now, I'm going to unshare this picture, and I'm going to go to another one, this one here. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to go through is some slides that is a presentation that was put together by the American Medical Directors Association that I'm a member of, that is designed basically, like it says here, for the staff of nursing homes and the residents. And so it was designed to try and answer the questions that staff and residents, and really everybody else too, have about the COVID-19 vaccine. So we'll just go through those, and then I'll try and answer the questions. So, I know that the hesitation out there is real in regards to, COVID-19 vaccine. And it revolves around many different reasons, but, concerns. And I know, a lot of long-term care staff are concerned about feeling like they're going to be a guinea pig, we're being first. And the feeling that the vaccine has been rushed or being rushed. Safety concerns, what are the side effects? And for long-term care residents, the concern was, well, they haven't been represented in any of the vaccine trials. Is it going to work on older individuals? And some of the other important factors, like how protective is the vaccine? How long does the protection last? And what is this emergency use authorization all about? Why the emergency use authorization? And so we're going to try and cover those as we go through here, these slides. And, why, just the first question right off the bat, why should I get vaccinated? Why should I? Several reasons, I think. One is to protect myself and my family, and we'll go through how that works. Keep my residents safe. This is the setting of giving these slides at a nursing home to the staff and to the residents. How I want to keep my residents safe. I mean, I've had at least 24 nursing home residents die from COVID-19 so far this year, at least, if not more. And I've had probably 100 to 150 residents get sick with it. So it's really affecting the nursing home population big time. And then we want to stop the spread in the community. And for the nursing home staff, it's to set an example for others, including the residents and their families, coworkers, community at large. Now, some of the questions that we're going to address is, how do we know the vaccine is effective and safe? Why should we trust the vaccine? Is there new technology being used? Is it dangerous? What's an EUA or emergency use authorization? What's that mean for me? When and how long will I be protected? A big question that a lot of people have is, will I still need to wear a mask? And what are the expected side effects? What if I've already had COVID-19? And where should I look to get accurate information? So, as many of you probably already know, there are 2 COVID-19 vaccines that have gotten the emergency use authorization. One is, and they're both what are called mRNA vaccines. That means messenger RNA. And messenger RNA is basically the genetic code that is transcribed from DNA into RNA and used out in the cytoplasm, out in the periphery of the cell, to make proteins. All proteins that are manufactured in the cell are manufactured based on the information from messenger RNA. And we'll go into how this works in the vaccine, but there are 2 companies, the Pfizer and then Moderna. Both of them have received authorization. And really important is this point that they do not contain COVID-19 virus. Neither of these vaccines contain the virus at all. There's no virus in the vaccine. So this mRNA vaccine, it's new in vaccine production, but it's been around, it's been studied for 10 years, and it's being used in cancer treatments now. Basically, this COVID-19 messenger RNA vaccine is giving instructions to our cells to make a harmless piece that looks like the spike protein, and the spike protein is found on the surface. You've probably seen this picture of the virus and all these little spike things on the surface. Those are what are called the spike proteins on the surface of the virus, and they are what interact with a particular receptor on the respiratory cells, the cells lining the respiratory tract. They interact with a receptor on the surface, and when they do, the cells bring the vaccine inside the cell, where the virus then releases its RNA into the cell, and in essence hijacks the protein making portion of the cell to make more viruses. And they do that until thousands and thousands of viruses have been made to the point where the cell ruptures, and those viruses then are released to go and infect other cells. So what they did with this vaccine is they came up with the messenger RNA instruction or the RNA that codes for this protein, for a harmless piece of the virus, this protein. In other words, the spike protein by itself is harmless in our body, but it is the thing that the immune system really recognizes as foreign, as the virus. And so, and our bodies, when recognize that this protein shouldn't be there, and so it begins to build antibodies against this protein. In other words, the vaccine, when it's injected, gets the messenger RNA that's being injected in the vaccine, gets taken up into cells, mainly the muscle cells, if you're going to be injecting it in your arm, the muscle cells. Those muscle cells then begin to make this harmless piece, the spike protein, and those spike proteins get put on the surface of their cells. The immune system recognizes that this is foreign and begin to make those special antibodies against this protein, the spike protein. And it's those antibodies that are those special weapons that remember how to fight the virus. And basically those antibodies that are made against it will actually glomp on, like glue on to the spike protein of the virus. And there may be multiple antibodies that are attaching to different spike proteins on the surface of the virus, and in essence, prevent it from being able to get into our cells. That's what the antibodies are doing. They're attaching themselves to the virus by attaching to the spike protein, and that then prevents the virus from being taken up, because they can't interact, those spike proteins then can't interact with the receptors on the surface of our cells, which they have to do to be able to get in to the cell and begin the infection process. So having said all that, they ask, can messenger RNA vaccine give me COVID-19? And the answer is no way possible. All it's coding for is the spike protein. It's not coding for the whole virus itself. So it can't give you COVID-19. Can messenger RNA vaccine change my DNA? And the answer is no, because the RNA that's being injected stays out in the periphery of the cell and never goes into the nucleus. And it couldn't, even if it did, change our DNA. It would not be able to change our DNA. Actually, the way our cells work, DNA codes for RNA. It's never the reverse way. So going on, we looking at these two vaccines and the trials, the Pfizer group enrolled over 40,000 people. The Moderna over 25, I think over 30,000 by the time they were done. And normally vaccine trials, the FDA requires that the vaccine manufacturer enroll at least 3,000 people. Well, these two companies were able to enroll 10 times or more the number of people that normally are required by the FDA. So they have a huge number of people in their trial. And they included all different kinds of races, Black, Hispanic. There was 45%, 56 to 85 in the Pfizer, 23% were over 65. So they had a very good mixture of people in the study and older people as well. So now the question is how protective? Now, it turns out that both of these provide 95, 94, 95% protection from having an infection. How'd they come up with what they do? Basically, what they did was they injected the people, the study population, and they waited and they watched for them to come down with symptoms and then be diagnosed with COVID-19. And so because they had, 40, 70,000 between the two of them, that's a lot of people that then had opportunity to interact with people that had COVID-19, pick up the virus, and then potentially become infected, develop symptoms. So what they did was, if they developed symptoms, they were evaluated, they were tested and determined if they had COVID-19. And they had set up to begin with that when they had 95 people be diagnosed with COVID-19 in their study, a completely separate group, an independent group who knew the code, who got the placebo, who got the vaccine, then kind of unmasked, not to the companies, but by themselves, determined out of those 95 people who got the placebo and who got the vaccine. And what they found is that of the 95 that had an infection, 90 of them had gotten a placebo, while 5 of the ones that were infected had gotten a vaccine. So 90 had gotten the placebo, got infected, 5 had gotten the vaccine and gotten the infection. And so that's where you've got 90 versus 5. That turns out to about a 95% reduction in the risk of getting infected. And then when they looked even farther, of the 90 that had gotten the placebo and gotten an infection, I think it was 10 or 11 of those got so sick they had to be hospitalized, and maybe even 1 died. Of the 5 that had gotten the vaccine and had gotten an infection, none of them became sick enough to be hospitalized. So it prevented completely all the serious infection, all the hospitalization. So, and part of the reason why things moved so quickly is that because we had such high community spread rate, that these 70,000 that were involved in the study, they very quickly came in contact with COVID-19 patients and had the opportunity to become infected. And so because they reached that level of predetermined number, 95 people with infection, they could quickly see, okay, how many of these were placebo, how many of these were vaccine, and be able to tell how effective was the vaccine in preventing the infection. So initially the FDA was looking for 50% effectiveness before they would ever even consider using it. And so these numbers of 94, 95% is like, this is a grand slam as far as we're concerned. So what should I expect when I get the vaccine? All right, here's the deal. Most every vaccine is going to have some kind of short-term discomfort like fatigue, headache, muscle pain, chills, fever, pain at the injection site. And this reaction, which is really a good thing because it's really telling you my immune system is recognizing this as foreign invader, and it's starting to ramp up its defenses. So it's actually a good thing if you have a reaction to some degree. The reactions have all last 24 to 48 hours, and they're typically more pronounced after the second dose. Both of these are 2 shots, 21 or 28 days apart. And so the second dose, usually people react more to. Now, the other thing, they've looked back over the 50 years of vaccines or so and have noticed that essentially all of the possible side effects or complications occur within 6 weeks of the injection. And what the FDA did, said they wanted 8 weeks. So this is after 8 weeks, they saw no serious like Guillain-Barré or any kind of serious lasting side effect. You probably heard that after they started the Pfizer injections in Great Britain, there were like 2 cases of severe allergic reaction, which every vaccine, really almost every drug, every medication, even herbal supplements have the potential for allergic reactions. And these were severe anaphylactic reactions where they went into shock. They were able to treat them very quickly, and they recovered and had no lasting effect. Now, one of the most important things about this vaccine is that it's not a 1 dose and you're good. You have to get the second dose to get full protection. And it has to be the same vaccine. It can't be Pfizer and then Moderna, or Moderna and then Pfizer. It has to be both the same vaccine. And what they found that after the first dose, there is some protection, but it's really after the second dose that the immune system produces the maximum benefit of those. Okay, so are they safe? FDA realizes we're going to be giving these shots to healthy people, so we certainly don't want to make healthy people, seriously ill. Most side effects occur within 6 weeks. They required 8 weeks. And then the monitoring for safety will continue after the vaccine. All vaccines, there's a continued monitoring wing of for vaccines that are collecting data even years after the vaccines were given. So, they normally have a minimum of 3,000 participants included in a trial. These had 30 to 50,000 participants, so 10 times the number of people in these studies. So that's why they felt good about the safety data. They're using the same standards that they've used for decades. No steps are skipped. No steps are skipped. Part of the reason why they've been able to get these vaccines to the point where they can be given is that unlike normally, the normal vaccine process is step by step by step, and you continue to progress if you're having positive results. And then at the end, you start manufacturing the vaccine. Well, they sped that process up, and they started manufacturing the vaccines as right at the beginning so that they would have a lot available if and when they were found to be effective. And these 2 independent advisory committees are the ones reviewing the results, and they have no conflict of interest. They're not associated with the manufacturers. They're not part of the FDA. They're separate, complete committees looking at all of the data and then giving advice to the FDA. So an emergency use authorization is based on the need to use the vaccine quickly in a public health emergency. You know, we're still in a public health emergency. It's a shorter process, but no steps are skipped in the safety evaluation process. The FDA will assess if the vaccine known and potential benefits outweigh the known and potential risks. So in other words, those two committees were, their basic role was to answer the question, are the benefits, known and potential benefits, do they outweigh the known and potential risks? And if they felt that the benefit outweighed the risk, then they would give the okay. So the EUA does not imply the authorization was done too quickly or that the vaccine is not safe. That's all been already looked at. So the way it was developed quickly was the huge amount of global effort. The government was giving money ahead of time to manufacture the doses, even while the trials were going on, knowing that maybe it wasn't going to work and they would lose all this money, but they were going to take the risk. And they got this very large pool of diverse adult volunteer trial participants. And so they were able to get it done quickly. So how long will it be protected by the COVID-19 vaccine? The vaccines are 2 doses. The full protection occurs like 1 to 2 weeks after the second dose. Like I said, it takes 7 to 10 days for that adaptive immune system to really kick into high gear. And that's why it's 1 to 2 weeks after the second dose, when those antibody levels are kind of at their peak. We'll most likely not know how long the vaccine is going to be protective once we receive it. We'll know more as more time passes, as time passes on, and we're able to continue to measure the levels of the antibodies in the blood of people that have gotten the vaccine. We'll be able to see how long those antibodies last. And we know that there's a lot of research going on in this. And we know that the vaccine not only stimulates these B cells to multiply and make antibodies, but they also stimulate the T cells and T memory cells to multiply. And those T cells, memory cells, stay around as well. And so it's both of them are involved in that adaptive immune response. Now, we don't know, but it may require booster shots, just like flu shots are, given vaccine shots for COVID-19 on a regular basis. Time's going to tell on that. Will I still need to wear a mask? And the short answer is yes. Similar to other vaccines, a large number of people in the community will need to get vaccinated before transmission drops enough to stop the use of masks. And one of the things that is unanswered at this point in time, we know this vaccine works really well to prevent infections. What we don't know is, does it prevent a person from even getting a little bit of an infection or a little bit of vaccine and being able to transmit it to others that maybe haven't been vaccinated, and then they get sick? In other words, will this stop the person that's vaccinated from transmitting virus to somebody else? And we don't know that yet. And that's why the masks, wearing a mask is not for me. It's not for the person wearing the mask. The mask is for others, to prevent you from spreading, unbeknownst, asymptomatically spreading virus to others around you. So the mask is to protect others, not to protect you. Is it safe to get the COVID-19 vaccine even if you've had COVID-19? and the short answer is yes, they usually are saying that you should be kind of over the infection, no symptoms, no fever before getting it. Some people have talked about waiting 90 days from when you have the infection till you get the vaccine. But they recommend getting the vaccination because it appears that the vaccine actually produces better immune response than even getting the virus, give you a longer, better protection. And even if you have positive antibodies, they're recommending to get the vaccine because the antibody tests are kind of iffy. They're not totally really accurate on telling if you're immune. This last slide is showing where to get accurate information. We know that a lot of things are being shared on social media that frequently has no real basis in evidence or to go by. And so they're recommending going to these websites. The CDC has several links that give the latest information. Vaccines are the only way to control the pandemic. Everyone has to do their part to get vaccinated to get back to normal life. And then we'll do questions. And I can go back to this slide here if you're wanting to copy down where those links are. And this will be on the church website too. So I've said enough, and let me open up for any questions.
I have a quick question. I mean, is there a plan in terms of age groups, et cetera, as to when they will be vaccinated, or is it just basically happenstance?
Well, no, I think there has been a plan as far as initially it was going to be frontline workers. The hospitals like Wesley has already gotten, Wesley and St. Francis have gotten a lot of their employees vaccinated. It's right now poised to go to the nursing home staff and residents. I believe after that, it's going to be opening up to frontline workers, frontline responders, the EMTs, police, firemen, and then, essential workers like the grocery store, other essential workers. And then, and I think at that point too, those over the age of 65 will be more in the front of that group. And then by late, I think by April or May, the hope is to be able to open it up to anybody, all ages, or 16 and older, I think is what they're saying.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just, I have no question as to the effectiveness of the vaccine to like stimulate antibody production and like form a faster defense against the virus. But my question is, how does the vaccine, if at all, affect the body's natural immune system, like the body's ability to naturally produce antibodies? And will the body ever develop a resistance against the vaccine or against things that are produced by the vaccine, like making it ineffective, where they would have to like update every so often?
Okay, kind of several questions there. Number one, it doesn't affect your body's ability to make when you say naturally produce the antibodies, it's naturally producing the antibodies.
Mm-hmm.
The antibodies produced by the vaccine would be the exact same antibodies produced in response to the virus. They're exactly the same. And
Mhm.
so it is natural. And so it's not changing the immune system's ability to recognize or fight the virus at all.
Mhm.
It's not affecting the innate, the innate is the first line. The adaptive is the T and B cells, the antibodies. That innate, my goal is I want both of them functioning well. I want the innate immune system working well, frontline workers, and I want the adaptive ones there as well. And so the first line responders are the ones where Dr. Sehalt's video of vitamin D, exercise, good sleep, sunshine, all of that, those are all important for that innate immune system. We need both, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, in regards to, you're kind of asked, the last part there is asking, what if this virus mutates? And the short answer is, viruses are mutating all the time. It appears that the coronaviruses, and this is a coronavirus, is different as far as mutation than the influenza virus. The influenza viruses are mutating much more rapidly, and HIV even more so. HIV is very rapidly mutating, and that's why we've never been able to come up with a vaccine against HIV, is because it mutates so quickly. And partially that's why influenza has to have a new vaccine every year, because looking at the new mutations that have been taking place over in China and the Orient, the coronavirus doesn't mutate nearly as rapidly as the influenza virus. And so the hope is that this, and in fact, this has been kind of interesting how you've got such a large percent, 40 or 50% of people that have COVID-19 that are completely asymptomatic. One of the reasons they're thinking that is the case is that because they've probably been in contact with other coronaviruses, other cold coronaviruses, and that there's some cross reactivity of the immunity against those other coronaviruses to this COVID-19 coronavirus. And that's why those people may be asymptomatic, is where the others that get sicker haven't had that previous exposure to other coronaviruses and didn't have that initial help. So the hope is that this virus, this vaccine will work longer and will not have to be updated like the influenza vaccine. Time will tell on that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Dr. Bryant, do you have to sign a release form to get this vaccine? Or
Yeah.
so I got two questions. Do you have to sign to get this vaccine, or are you giving out this vaccine? Your nurse is coming to homes. That's the second question.
I know the nursing homes are getting consent. From what I understand, for an emergency use authorization, they don't have to have consent. I mean, per se, it's not quite the same, but I know the nursing homes are getting consent before they're giving the vaccine.
Okay. So do I have to get consent with the family of my client for her to have the vaccine? Or, does someone come out and give it to her just because of the routine?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's gonna depend on how this rolls out to the larger community. Right now, CVS and Walgreens are the two big pharmacy chains that have been basically given the vaccine to distribute it. And so I'm assuming that it's going to be a while before the access is going to be other than CVS or Walgreens. In other words, a regular pharmacy or your doctor's office and so forth. And depending on the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine has to be stored at like 80 or 90 degrees below zero. And so that's why they have to have these special freezer units. And so that kind of complicates how easy, it's not something that the regular physician's office is going to be able to handle.
Okay. And another
I've got a
question.
question.
Go ahead.
I've got a question. I know that it's been said, or at least it's been said on the news, that there's going to be employers that are going to, besides hospitals, that are going to require this vaccine so that you can stay working for them. Do you see any of that coming into play, or have you heard anything like that, or so that plants and or certain companies, because if one person comes down with COVID, or more than one person in a department, they have to be out for at least 2 weeks or until they have no symptoms when they come back. So have you heard, and what have you heard about having to have a card or whatever to say that you've been vaccinated or whatever? Have you heard anything like that?
I really don't know anything more than what you've heard yourself. I haven't heard anything more in regards to that. I have heard right now, none of the nursing homes are requiring or mandating that staff or residents get the vaccine. There may be employers around the country that say that that's what they're going to do. I mean, like the hospitals, they mandate the flu shot, but then they also say you can, I think Paula, you have the access to wear an N95 mask rather than take the vaccine. So it's either the vaccine or wear a mask.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, at St. Francis, it's not an option, only if you've had problems with the flu shot. But other than that, you have to take it. I mean, if you're going to work there, some people don't take it because they've had bad reactions and they have to have a doctor's excuse not to take it. They're not mandating the COVID shot though.
They are mandating it? Yeah.
No, they're not.
Okay, they're just highly encouraging it.
Yeah.
Right. Wesley is the same.
Wesley's the same.
Wesley is the same. And they do give you a card because they put a sticker on your badge if you got the flu shot. And for years not taking the flu shot, I've always had to wear a mask. This year was the first time I had to sign that said, if I am not masked, when I am in the presence of other people, it's an immediate dismissal.
Okay.
So they have run it up like that. Staff can still say no. And actually one of the people that I work with said no this year. She said, I have to wear a mask anyways. What's the punishment? So she did not take the influenza, but both of us ended up getting COVID.
Okay.
So and ours were from, I don't know if she got it through a patient, I got it from a doctor.
Okay. He didn't know that he had COVID at the time?
Oh, she was sicker than a dog. and then after she finished that case, they sent her down and had her tested.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She would, but and there's a lot of behind the story with why she was working, why what was going on. There's more to that I cannot tell, but
Right.
I understood why, but a week and a day later, they sent me home and I tested positive.
Okay. Right. Okay.
But the one thing that I have with COVID, I really question how many different strains there are of it, because every single person that has had it at the hospital that I've talked to, our symptoms start from here and go clear to there, and they're not the same. It's a completely different run in all of us almost.
Right, and that, but as far as the vaccine is concerned, it's going to work for all those strains.
Mhm.
So it's not affected by the morphology
No,
and how it changes, because it is
the
changing.
vaccine trials proved that by the fact that you had 95% reduction.
Okay.
Now we have, it's 5:40 right now. This could, if you have questions, great. We could also continue the next week if there are more questions.
I have two questions before you leave. I have two questions that came in, and this is just from somebody. So like, there's no right question or dumb question. It's just a question that people are asking. So two people have asked a question. One is asking, so there's no microchip in this vaccine?
No,
And the reason
No,
for that,
and then it doesn't mean that we laugh. This is just somebody who's really, there's just so much information, misinformation out there. So there's no way to try and make some people's questions be like less important. You know, this is somebody who's really concerned. And then there's another question also here that goes to, so this vaccine is not going to make me less spiritual. You know, these are basic questions. You know, they're not really deep questions that people would think that, okay, you know, I'm educated, this is what I'm thinking, you know, but there's misinformation out there that, okay, it will inhabit my spirituality, like just all that kind of realm. That's where I think he's going.
yeah, no, I mean, it's affecting the immune system. It's not, the short answer is no.
Dr. Bryant,
Yeah,
comment from that. I'll tell you, after coming home with that the first day and sleeping basically for a week, I recognized that that affected spirituality, because it was a week before I could even sit up and think.
okay, so this would be a positive effect on spirituality.
Yeah, I mean, if it keeps you from getting it, because for me, it took almost a week, but in the long run, it has really affected things, because I am much more careful about certain things. I'm careful about what time I go to bed. I used to stay up way too late. I mean, even 9 o'clock is too late when you're getting up at 4. And so that has really made me stop and look at my habits. And I want to be ready. I want to know what I need to know, how self can be subdued in me. And that was one of the things that I've really been studying more and dealing with, because that really, really was frightening, to be in a place where you don't know if you're going to survive.
So
You
how
don't know, because I slept and slept and slept. Am I going to come out the other side of this? It was really scary.
Yeah. Yeah. One other thing in regards to, not regards to the microchip, but you know, some people have concerns. Are there other things in the vaccine, preservatives, other chemicals in the vaccine that are going to affect me? And they actually basically had no preservatives in. They have no preservatives in this. They have no other chemicals in it. It's like saline solution. So there are no like preservatives that could be affecting somebody.
Okay, I have one more question that's sort of along that line. One of the things that is out there, and not that I believe that, but there's a possibility. Is there a possibility that if you were younger, it would cause anybody to be sterile or anything like that? Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I don't. That's not been seen. That's not been reported. And I would say that would be an extremely rare possible complication, and that I don't think it's ever been reported.
we have a question.
Yes.
We have a question here.
Dr. Bryant?
Yeah.
So somebody just for whatever reason decides, you know, because obviously there will be people who don't want to get it, maybe they are against vaccines in general. But if, would you say that it can be to each his own, or does somebody, I mean, can people use the argument that, oh, okay, if you don't get it, you're really putting the community at risk? Or is that not the case? Is it just, if you get it, it helps you not come down with it, you know, COVID-19, but if someone else decides that they don't want to, then it's not going to
Yeah.
put the rest of us at a greater risk, or it doesn't.
You're talking about what's called herd immunity. In other words, that when 50 to 70% of the community is immune, whether from infection or the vaccine, it effectively stops the ability for the virus to jump from person to person. There just are so few people that it can infect that it stops that community spread. When you get 50 to 70% of the community immune to a particular virus.
Okay.
And then that can happen by either getting the infection or by the vaccine.
Why did Dr. Fauci come out a couple of days ago and say that you might need up to 90% herd immunity?
Okay, I hadn't heard that.
He said it might be up to 90, but then again, he hasn't always been right.
You know, I guess he might be saying that just from the standpoint of how contagious this virus is.
Also, to have things get back to normal. He was alluding towards getting, the question he was asked was when is things supposed to get back to fully normal as well?
Okay. Yeah. I would say it's probably partially that and partially just in, you know, this new strain in England that is supposed to be like 70% more transmissible. You know, that's probably here come to America. So yeah, it's so transmissible that you've got to have just such a few number of people that the virus could potentially infect to where it will eventually die out.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Bryant, is it true that different states have different, different levels as to how soon they're going to have people get the vaccinations? Because my daughter-in-law that works at Advent Source is getting her vaccination next week in Nebraska, because she said that in Nebraska, education people were on the next ones on the list.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up a good point. It's up to each state to determine who gets the vaccine and how, you know, the sequence. So yeah, Nebraska could have a different scheme than Kansas, than from Colorado or California. Yeah, so it's dependent on each state.
Kevin, I have a question too.
Okay. I have a question too.
Dr. Sabangan asked, mentioned he has a question, please.
Yeah, no, I just have a little comment. So I understand all the immunology behind all this, but maybe not all, but I wonder in people with reticular endothelial malignancy like lymphoma, leukemia, or even lung cancer, or anyone with suppressed immune system, how do they ensure enough protection? You know, the idea is to produce enough antibodies for a protective effect. How do you ensure that in people with malignancies or even diabetics or kidney failure individuals? How do they ensure that? How do they even know how much antibodies need to be produced to ensure protective effect from the coronavirus?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, obviously there's going to be individuals that are going to respond better or worse
Right.
to the vaccine. You know, the cancer patients probably worse, the diabetics worse. Yeah, you know, I don't know on these two individual studies how many of them, you know, had cancer, how many of them were diabetics. I don't know this, drilling down to those fine details. I don't know.
Because
Yeah,
it's interesting to know if those 5% that had this vaccine and they're still getting the virus, if they actually had some of these other.
Yeah, I didn't hear of the, you know, of the 5 that got the vaccine, that got the infection. I hadn't heard, you know, oh, well, they had cancer or they had diabetes as well. I haven't heard that information, but I mean, yeah, that's obviously a question for those individuals.
In other words, the efficacy rate that they're quoting is just for healthy, young, I mean, relatively healthy individuals in the population. That's what I'm getting. I mean,
Sure. I mean,
Oh, I mean, they had a lot of people, older people in the study. So I think they had a lot of comorbid conditions in those people too. So I don't think it was like, it wasn't all just 21-year-old college students needing extra money.
so in other words, those 60, 70,000 people, they didn't weed out those with special conditions.
No, I don't think so.
it was across the board. Yeah, it was well.
Okay.
represented.
Yeah, I want
Let's see,
another question.
Monica?
Yes, Dr. Bryant. I want to know the 2 companies that were approved to start the use of the viruses. I mean, the use of the vaccine. What between the various companies? What differences are there between the vaccines that they're manufacturing? How do we know? You know,
Okay.
what's what about the various vaccines?
The two, both the Pfizer and the Moderna are what are called messenger RNA. They're essentially the same method, the same, they work the same way. The difference is in how they have to be stored. Both of these, the messenger RNA molecule is a very unstable molecule, and to stabilize it, they had to put it inside little oil droplets, basically, that then are kind of protected till it gets into the cell and into the cytoplasm. So the Pfizer one, the way it's designed, it has to be kept, to be able to store it for a long enough period of time, it has to be stored like 80 degrees below zero, which is way below your standard refrigerator freezer. So it had to have special freezers. The Moderna vaccine, on the other hand, can be stored in a regular, freezer. So it's much more stable, and so it's going to be able to be stored more easily than the Pfizer one. That's really the main difference between the two, is just how they're
stored. So with that in mind, Dr. Bryant, even though they both are the messenger RNA, the fact that there's even that level of difference, doesn't that suggest that, I mean, there's still something, for instance, I mean, you know, when you think about different companies that make the same product, there's something different about those products that allows those companies to be able to put them out as their company's product. And so what is it, or what could possibly be involved in it that would require one to be stored at that level and then the other one not necessary to store in that same manner?
Well,
and how do we, how do we know those things don't matter, or how do we determine the significance of whether those things matter or not?
The way we determine that is from the study itself. the study shows that
Okay.
they're almost identical in effectiveness in reducing the risk of infection. They're 94, 95%. They're essentially the same.
Now, I did read that maybe about 50% after the first shot and then 90% after the second shot.
Exactly, and that's why there are 2 shots. It's after the second shot that you get the full immunity. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think Minnie had another one.
Minnie, you had another one?
Oh, well, yeah. What is the antibiotic test and what is used for? Antibiotic test?
The antibody test?
Yeah, and what is it used for?
Well, I mean, basically, it's just a blood test to see if a person has antibodies in their blood already against COVID-19, against the virus. And you know, I think the hope was that, well, if I get this antibody test and it shows that I have antibodies, then I'm immune and I don't have to get the vaccine or whatever. There's been some problems with what to do with the information with the antibody tests that are available right now. They don't give, from what I'm understanding, they don't give really an accurate enough picture to really be able to predict from an antibody test that you are definitely immune to COVID-19. So I'm not hearing a big push to get antibody testing.